Hi there. Come on in. I'm Fred Trost. You're watching The Practical Sportsman. It is Thursday night, January 11th, the year 2001. Now, we just got through December of 2000, which was brutal with winter storms, which reminded me, why don't we take a look at a colossal storm in the summer? Now, it doesn't match up to The Perfect Storm, the book and the movie off the North Atlantic, but it happened in Lake Michigan. Storms may not make the hunting and fishing any better, but I tell you, they can be exciting. I'll show you. Stay tuned.
You don't get to see this very often.
Make the best of it. I got the idea for this upcoming feature when I recently read The Perfect Storm. Now, the movie was good, but this book was even better. Lots of details and situations that weren't in the movie. Anyway, the storms that we've been having this winter are not terribly comfortable. Now, the storm you're about to see took place in 90-degree weather. This was back in 1988, and it had many of the characteristics of the perfect storm. 49 happy anglers leaving Nichols Landing in South Haven last Saturday afternoon. Well, why shouldn't we all be happy? We'd just seen about 2 months of nothing but sunshine and dry weather. Captain Don Nichols had good perch reports. That morning, one fellow caught 200 perch himself on one of the Captain Nichols party boats. As we headed out through the break walls, our anglers were busy threading their lines through their guides, adjusting sinkers, retying hooks, and getting their gear ready. Our cameraman, John Ford, was adjusting his lenses, always on the lookout for interesting angles, documenting aspects of the trip he felt were most important. And the sun was shining.
When we left the dock, the warnings were up, and they were supposed to be till 11 o'clock tonight. And on a day like today, might not be anything, and there might be a good one coming through.
We caught all the swells right here for the cameraman, for John.
So we keep an eye on it with the radar. Again,
whoa, look at that guy flying.
Yeah, there's a lot of those around now.
When he came back the first pass, he was coming out of the water.
It's tough on the back.
Yeah. So now the radar, look at this, John. We got this is the radar screen here. We are right there.
Yeah. I'm looking at 36 nautical miles to the edge of the screen here. That's the shoreline. Now, I've got some static here because I've got the gain way high to try and pick up a storm. And then we can go down to 16 miles. Now we get the whole coast real good.
Well, it didn't matter what the weather report said. We knew what we were in for. Sunshine and hot weather, the same stuff we've had since May. The fishing started off a little bit slow, a fish here and there, and the perch weren't running very big either. But it was still early. The afternoon trip stay out to about 6:30 or so, and by then we knew we'd tie into perch, but the captain stayed up on the bridge. Now, what are you looking for? You're looking for a rainstorm or something?
Well, I think before the day is done, you'll be able to come up here to see one. We hear the thunder in the distance, so they're talking a 65 knot one. It was over in Chicago, moving northeast. So that would be...
Oh, so that's why you have that look on your face.
Well, yeah, on a day like today, you're concerned anyway, but we just keep an eye on it.
Well, as the fishing seemed to pick up, so did the storms that were predicted. Not on the horizon, but on the radar screen.
Okay, as you can see now, we've got them cropping up all over. We tracked the biggest one south of us here was running at about 40 knots. We've got one inland. This is the curvature of the lake. We're looking at now 16 miles. Each ring is 4 miles. We're sitting right there in the center. As you can see, the heavy line is still down around St. Joe. Although we got this one inland and we got this one here, it's probably going to get us wet here.
Now, so that you think this one is going to come towards us?
Yeah, we've been tracking it here for the last, it should be 20 minutes now, and that's how we figured out the speed of it. But right now she's coming up on 8 miles, and that was 16 miles 10 minutes ago.
Well, if this one is going to hit us, then this one will pass us, right?
These could all merge together. This could be the entire line.
You mean we could be attracting all of the rainstorms in the area right here?
No, but thunderstorms, this is the actual moisture that's in the clouds, but that is the line of thunderstorms that's running, and this is what they've had predicted all day, and it runs from southwest to northeast. So now the leading front seems to be 7 miles away. He's already gained a mile.
So the big question is, why are we still out here? I mean, is this a concern?
Yes, we know our time limit to get in, and we just keep an eye on it here. And one of the other things is, if you notice, there's quite a few small boats here. And all we've got is the sheriff's department here, and so we'll have to work with them. We're pretty safe on here.
Mm-hmm.
It'd just be a lot of wind, but so hang on to your hat.
Well, as we watched the lightning and clouds build from the southwest, Captain Don looked a little concerned. Small boats started hightailing it for shore, and soon the strong wind and rain hit us, a storm that, frankly, was a welcome sight. We all cheered for the farmers and for all of us who have been waiting so long for water from the sky. Quite a commotion in the cabin as Captain Nichols headed for the breakwalls. Well, he's going in there.
Yeah.
But tell us about the storm here, Captain, we're in.
You're seeing that Lake Michigan at her best. 60-knot winds, fog right with it, visibility down to zero. Can't even hardly pick it up on the radar now because there's so much rain and static in the air. So.
This is the year of the drought.
Yeah, the farmers are probably loving it. Yeah, well, you got to see one. You got to see the front come through, the squall line, the wind, the rain, and this is where guys get in trouble. In the small boats. Apparently 2 of them did go ashore. We won't know for a little while just what happened.
You mean they went right up on the beach?
Yeah, Donnie saw it just before the fog bank rolled in. They were headed right for the shore. It's pretty hard to hold it in that kind of wind. And we saw 3 water spouts, and he had one across his bow. Very small ones, but they were...
So many spots to stay out there that long.
It was right ahead of the squall line.
Do you see it any worse than this?
I've been in 2 or 3 like this. We didn't stay long enough for the sea to build. Of course, with this much wind, you won't get much sea. Not for a while, anyway.
Well, downstairs the people are having a grand time. It's like a big club down there.
That's what my job is. To make sure,
happy.
Keep them happy, that's right.
Honestly, everybody was saying that it was exciting. The fishing was kind of slow and we had a ball.
Good. You don't get to see this very often.
Make the best of it. Well, we did make the best of it, but we were a little disappointed on one hand that our trip had to be called on account of weather. But seeing buckets of rain pelt the parking lot was a mighty welcome sight. Maybe the back of the drought had been broken after all. Captain Don Nichols said the chances of being hit by lightning during a storm like this are much greater on shore or near shore. Well, I'm not sure everybody was convinced by that, but it was a safe trip on this big party boat and one of our most memorable fishing trips in Michigan outdoors. What a wild trip. Now, lately, our precipitation has been stacking up in snowbanks. Now, this is the neighborhood where my wife and I live. Just amazing. Now, shoveling snow has kept me warm for a short time, but I really prefer a couple of bowls of hot soup if you want to know the truth. Now, as you chip away at your snowbanks, here's a recipe you might want to consider.
Rooster!
If you were lucky enough to get a pheasant on opening day, Barbara Conklin from Fairborn, Ohio has a super recipe for pheasant cheese soup that starts by boiling a pheasant until it's tender. Now, while it's on the stove, combine some chopped carrots, celery, onion, and mushrooms in a saucepan with a couple tablespoons of butter. Cover and cook over low heat until the vegetables are tender. Then stir in a 1/4 cup of flour, add 2 cups of milk, 1½ cups of the broth from the boiled pheasant, and 1½ cups of cubed cooked pheasant meat, and then a little dash of paprika. Now cook this as you keep stirring it until it's thick and bubbly. Now the last thing you do is stir in 1½ cups of shredded American cheese, and there you go, a soup fit for a king. Now, if opening day was not kind to you, this recipe works with chicken or turkey or squirrel, but you can still call it Barbara Conklin's Pheasant Cheese Soup. The complete recipe is on our website, and it will be printed in the upcoming Hunting, Gathering, and Collecting magazine. I know we're just horrendously late in this publishing schedule, but I tell you, the forces in the marketplace and the outdoors have been changing and twisting and turning, and we've hopefully been keeping up with them, sort of like a rodeo rider. but we're revising the magazine extensively and this television show. We're going back to some of the things that worked really well back in the 80s. For example, the original format of our trophy book. Now, all of these fish you're going to see were caught at this time in January. It was the 9th of January when Mike Delaney from Lansing caught this 18-pound, 41-inch northern pike from a gravel pit in Ingham County. He was using a minnow on a tip-up with 30-pound test line. Now, just a note, this trophy was certified by Jim Wisner of Sportsman's Tackle on Main Street here in Bath. On January 17th, Scott Kogelman from Allenton took a bigger-than-average white crappie from Macomb County Stony Creek, 2 1/4 pounds, 16.5 inches, jigging a minnow with 2-pound test line. January 10th, Diane Vernon from Livonia caught a dandy bluegill, 10.5 inches, little over a pound, from Oakland County's Upper Pettibone Lake. Caught it on a waxworm. And Ron Reed from Fostoria caught this bluegill on the 17th of January, but he waited until he got it mounted to get a photo. It came from Deep Lake in Oakland County. 1 1/4 pound, a foot long. He got it on a waxworm using a rod and reel he said he bought for $6.99. Now let's finish the trophy book up in Antrim County. You know where that is? It's on Lake Michigan between Traverse and Charlevoix. We had only 2 hunting awards entered from Antrim County in 1999, an 8-pointer with a 19-inch spread. 18-year-old Bob Jordan from Bel Air took it on opening day, 4:30 in the afternoon, using a 300 Winchester mag. And on November 25th, at 3 in the afternoon, Frank Hogarth from Buckley got this 8-point, 18-inch spread with tines a little over a foot long. He was using a 35 caliber Marlin lever action. Now you'll hear Frank's story on a future show, but here's a timely Antrim County trophy, a 37-pound, 51-inch muskie that came from Intermediate Lake. Darren Dawson from Central Lake caught it on January 3rd on very light line because Darren was not fishing for muskie. Central Lake.
For walleye.
And jigging.
Right.
With a jigging stick? Or what?
Yeah, just a rod and reel and a Swedish pimple.
A little Swedish pimple with a minnow on it?
With a minnow and 4-pound test.
Come on. So can you verify this?
Yeah.
You were with him?
I'm the one that pulled it through the hole.
And who are you?
Mike Harvey.
Mike Harvey. What would you have done without Mike?
Probably lost the fish.
How long did you fight this thing to get it to the hole?
I think it seemed like a couple hours, but I think it was only 20, 25 minutes probably.
Really? Close.
It seemed like a long time.
Now, pulling it through the hole is a thing in itself. You backed up, or how'd you get that head up through the hole on 4-pound test line?
Stuck my hand down in the ice and just pulled it through.
Oh.
Stuck my fingers in the gills, pulled.
How big of a hole did you have?
8-inch.
That was a tight fit, huh?
Oh, yeah. Real tight.
Now, I mean, you can, get your hands down there and get the teeth on your hands. I mean, that'd tear you up. So what inspired you?
A fish this big, wouldn't you do it?
Well, yeah. 4-pound test. You didn't have a wire leader or anything on.
No, he was hooked way in the corner of his mouth.
Ah, right in the corner there. So, well, yeah, when you're jigging like that, oftentimes it'll catch right in the corner.
Right.
Well, that's one outstanding story.
Thank you.
A 51 1/4 inch muskie that came from a lake in Antrim County, ice fishing. I tell you, that's a great story, guys. Congratulations. Congratulations, Darren Dawson.
Thank you.
Whoa. I really enjoy the trophy book stories, and the trophy book data can be interesting, but not all trophies have to be really big. Some of them are so unusual they're worthy of note. Now, Don Herzog, who lives down in the Berry County area, caught this bass on a private lake in Berry County. He calls it the Bulldog Bass. When I showed this otherwise normal-looking mount to our museum taxidermist, Tim Hayes, I really only wanted to know what he thought about this fish's face. What's that all about?
Hard to say. He looks like he ran into a cement wall next to a nuclear power plant.
Whoa, turn him around here so I can see inside his mouth.
It's actually the inner part of the mouth is formed pretty much anatomically correct. I'm not sure if the fish could actually close his mouth or not. He obviously ate and survived, so I mean he must have been somewhat healthy. He doesn't look like he's deformed in any other way. I mean,
But he's certainly is deformed in the face.
Yeah, I imagine he probably wasn't as fast a swimmer as the other fish, who were a lot more streamlined, but...
I mean, his eyes. Oh, there's the angle. What in the, have you ever seen anything like this before?
As a matter of fact, I have. I've seen a couple other fish that have the same basic rounded, no forehead look. A friend of mine in Toledo has a walleye that he caught and did for himself that exactly the same type of configuration. But why it is, I have no idea. It's a deformity that you'd think the fish wouldn't live through, but obviously he did. I mean, he was healthy enough to bite whatever the person that caught him.
That's one strange looking mother.
You know, like I say, we used to laugh about them, figure, hey, they hung up too close to the nuclear plants, but it's really hard to say what... it'd be interesting to see what a biologist had to say about it.
You can see this bulldog bass at the museum, courtesy of Don Herzog of Berry County. Several weeks ago in this outdoor collecting segment I like to do, I showed this pistol. I mean, it's a hair dryer, for crying out loud, shaped like a pistol, made in 1981. You can't buy one anyplace today. It's so politically incorrect. But you know, the public television managers talked to me about this because they got a lot of complaints of people complaining about me putting this on the air. I mean, for crying out loud, it's a hair dryer, it's collectible. So much of what I do on this program is politically incorrect. I mean, I go hunting and fishing, and we kill the animals and fish. I promote recipes where we bring them home and eat them. I promote taxidermy where we mount these animals, and I'm an advocate of furs. I mean, I promote the shooting sports, shotguns, rifles, handguns, and with this new concealed weapons law that was passed in Michigan, I'm going to be doing considerably more features on guns and CCW permits. I mean, if public television can't handle a specialized show like this to a unique audience, I think our society is in trouble. But if enough of you keep supporting me, I'll be able to keep going. Now, those of you who are offended by the thought of a hairdryer shaped like a gun, please turn the channel, because this time we're going to be taking a real collectible handgun to our weapons expert, Mike Stewart. And for those of you interested in things like this, here's the story on this unusual piece that Tom Hansen from Oxford brought to me. It had been in his family, but they didn't know anything about it. He wanted to know what it was, where it came from, and what it was worth.
Now, this is actually not as unusual as most people would think. I'm looking for some markings. I don't see any.
They had trouble finding markings too.
Well, you have to remember that they weren't required by law back then to mark anything.
Back when?
Oh, this dates back to the turn of the century or just before. They had not invented the Berdan primer, which is what we call a regular primer. The European primers were Berdan. This is a pinfire. The cartridge actually has a little pin sticking up that sticks out of this slot here. And really what it is just a match. And it drives the pin down against a striker inside the back of the cartridge, igniting the powder inside and firing it. It was really the first attempt at a self-contained cartridge with its own priming device built into the back of it. This one's a bit more ornate than normal, even though a lot of them were ornate. They were very popular in Europe when they first came out, and you'll find that 99% of them were made either in Belgium or Germany. Now, this one at first glance appears to be German to me, even though the majority of them are actually Belgian. And the reason I say that is because it appears to have German proof marks on it. Can you get in that?
Yeah, now how do you know they're German?
Because that's a German proof mark. I love it when the barrel points at me. It's my favorite. That's a German crown proof mark. The LG with the crown usually means it was made in Liège, Belgium. You know, the home of Browning, FN. Same little city. It's a city of gun makers, actually. and that's where the Belgian Gunmakers Guild is even to this day. They now own Browning again for the first time in a long time. These are not incredibly valuable, but they are incredibly collectible. And what makes them incredibly collectible is they're unusual, and they don't cost a fortune to collect. You can collect a bunch of them without having a whole bunch of money.
When you say a bunch of them, you're talking about pinfires?
Yeah, pinfires, sure. There are people that collect pinfires, and you can pick up nice ones for $70, $80, $100, $200. I would say this one, though, because it's unusual with the gold wire inlay, and very nicely done. This could have a value to somebody that collected pinfires of around maybe $350 to $500, which again is not incredibly valuable for a gun this old. If this was a Colt and it was that old, we'd be looking at 4 figures or maybe even 5 figures for a gun like that. But if you take a look at this thing, I mean, even the back strap is nicely decorated with deep relief engraving. It's bordered. Now that means that all the flat surfaces, see down in here, they have a border engraving. It carries around the side of the frame. Triple border. You got a center border and 2 outside borders. Very nicely done. Bottom of the trigger guard, deep relief engraving. The lanyard, of course, the lanyard ring is real traditional, European. You don't find too many American guns with these unless they were cavalry issue guns, something to snap the lanyard on. But in Europe, they were pretty common. What's really nice about this one is that it even works.
We will revisit Mike Stewart and this pinfire pistol. There are a lot more interesting aspects to it and to gun collecting than we have time for right now. Now, another element. Now, here's a quick look at one of the subjects I'm going to feature on next week's show.
My first gun, I went through the same procedure that you'll go through now. They say that there's no gun control. In the state of Michigan, there's always been gun control as far as I know.
Larry Kelly told me this in 1985. The fact is, handgun purchases have been strictly regulated and registered for many years. Join me, Fred Trost, for the start of an ongoing series about the rights and responsibilities that go with guns in Michigan. That's Practical Sportsman, next week, right here on public television. This Saturday, I'll be here at the museum working on the magazine. Tim Hayes will be here working on taxidermy, answering questions. Now, the following weekend, the 20th of January, Tim Farragon and I are heading up to Bark River up in the Upper Peninsula. The Polar Bear Sporting Clay Shoot at Orchard Hill. Now, there's no closed season on sporting clays. It's a lot of fun, even in the cold. Well, it's not as much fun as in the summer, but hey, you got to play the cards you're dealt. You know what I mean? Well, have a good time this weekend, and I'll see you back here next week. A little disappointed on one hand that our trip had to be called on account of weather, but seeing buckets of rain pelt the parking lot was a mighty welcome sight. Maybe the back of the drought had been broken after all. Captain Don Nichols said the chances of being hit by lightning during a storm like this are much greater on shore or near shore. Well, I'm not sure everybody was convinced by that, but it was a safe trip on this big party boat and one of our most memorable fishing trips in Michigan outdoors.